services. It's a new product from Talend. We're going to just do a quick overview of the Talend API services. The design API first, like why you design the API first, then go on to how you implement the API and how to test the API, and a little bit about the run architecture, and then a demo. I'll dive into how you actually do all this stuff. So this is Talend Cloud API services. It's a comprehensive API delivery platform, and you see it's best in class, it's industrialized, it's agile, it's reduced, and it's this purpose-built for the modern API first data access. And so one of the things, it's really sort of, it may not have been the first, but they definitely have a real cohesive kind of platform that allows you to do from the design all the way through the implementation and the testing. It's really cohesive. It really works nicely together. It's one of the things I found about how it just kind of plugs and plays really nicely together. So basically, here's the platform, right? You have the design, you have implement, you have test, and operate. So they have the tools to do all four of these things. So you design it with the API designer, which is Restlet, which is a product that they bought. It's pretty fully baked. So this is not like something they just came out with. This is something that's been out in the market for several years, and they've just kind of incorporated it into their platform. So you have the API designer. Then we all know we have Talend Studio for implementation. And then we have the API tester for testing. And then they have the TMC, or you can actually put it in the TAC, is what I've been told. So for managing the platform or operating the jobs. So we're going to be using a student API. So I just have some basic student information, and we'll be putting together a couple more resources used for course information. But it's built and test to scale. It's tied together with the cloud, and we'll be doing some of this stuff. I don't do any of the e-commerce stuff with this, but in the demo, we do use student stuff when we get and set students. You'll see that. So design first. So why design first? So we're going to build the student API operations. It fosters collaboration. It improves API customer satisfaction. It reduces the time to market, and it helps to manage change. So by producing the API first, one of the cool things about it is that you allow your end users to get access to the API before it's actually fully implemented. So you can establish that handshake, create that partnership, and you can sort of work collaboratively to build the API once that sort of interface is built. So that's one of the cool things about doing the API first. So we use the Talend API designer. Like I said, it's Restlet. Well, it's no longer Restlet. They bought it. It's really slick. It's well designed. It's sort of easy to operate. It's visual. This is one of the cool things. This is kind of the key part to being able to establish that handshake early, is that you can spin up your endpoints and just define the different endpoints, and then it'll mock every single one of them for you. So you can actually put some fake data in there, and your client can start getting information back and getting results from those API calls immediately without having all the back end tied together. So that's one of the cool things about it. And it documents your API for you all along the way. So as long as you're putting your comments in, while you're putting the information into the system up front as you're building the API, your documentation is fully baked without you having to do anything. So the implementation, I think we're all familiar with this. It's Talend Studio, and you have these new, this is only 7.1.1, so you have this new REST API definitions down here in the metadata. And that's kind of how it ties together. It's really pretty slick. And when you see it, you're like, that's good. So that's how you do it, and I'll get into how we actually go about getting these things. But it's drag and drop. You implement it just like you would any other job. So there's that. So it's easier, faster, collaborative, data service and routes, data quality, complex reservation. So it's basically anything you can do with a standard route, you can do in these. So right, you have all of your transformations, you have your fuzzy matching, you have all of that available to you. Anything you do in a normal Talend job is available here. So pretty slick. And then there's the API testing. Now we have an API, we've implemented it. When we want to test early, I'll show you that. You can actually test a little early too. So you have a tester, which again is their Restlet stuff. It allows you to test your API. You can create individual API requesters. You can create more complex scenarios where you tie a bunch of requests together, making sure they're doing the things they want to do. You can add assertions. I'm not sure what these other two, what dynamic expression wizards are. I didn't get into that. So something you guys can check out if you're interested. And then you can also build it into continuous integration. You can roll this into your CI so you can test you can have it automatically test as you go. So It's visual. Again, it's a lot like the API designer. It's visual. It's easy to evaluate the API responses. It simulates real life usage in APIs. And I'm sure there's a way you could probably even do some sort of load testing with this, but I didn't get into that. So, and it's automatic. You can do continuous integration with it. So the run architecture, here it is. This probably means more to some of you than me because I haven't really done a lot with implementing this stuff. But there it is. That's how it works. I guess you can put it in the remote engine. You can have your third-party gateways, your firewall with your development studio, and your on-premise apps and databases behind the firewall. So it works just like any other job. You can deploy it as a data service using the Talend Management Console. And here's some of the benefits of putting it in the cloud. So hosted documentation, managed and monitored runtimes. I think you guys are all familiar with what the benefits of the cloud, the Talend Cloud. If you're not, there's plenty of better people to talk about it than me. But there's some of the basic benefits of the Talend Cloud. And some of the takeaways here is that API design and test, you've got graphical implementations, and you've got managed deployments. So that's basically the presentation, and I'll just get into the demo. I think we're all interested in how this thing works. So that's what I'll do. So first things first, I'll go with the API designer. So here's your basic, here's your API designer. This is what you'll see when you have an API already available. So we have this student API, like I said. It's got a few different operations and then a few different resources within those operations. So operations in this case would be at this level. You have the student ID operation, and then you have just the basic student operation. And inside the student ID URL, you have get student by ID and delete student by ID. And then you have at the student level, you have just get students and get new students. So what I'm going to do is what I'll do, I'll just click in behind one of these so you can see how this works. So you have your general information up here. We don't have any authentication on this API because it's just for testing. You have your request parameters, and then you have your responses here. And you can see here we actually return a student JSON structure that we've defined inside of the API. So that's what we do. Delete student, basically you have an ID that you can use to delete this. And this returns a 202, which is accepted if the student was found and deleted. We have get student, which does take some query parameters, a little different than the other two. You can actually put in a last name, an entry term, a first name, or an application status, and it will query the database based on those values. And then again, it returns a 200 if it finds something, and it returns a list of students in the student data structure. And then we have add new students, which takes a student JSON object in the request body, and it's a post. So that's that one. All right. So what I'll do, I put together a little thing. So I'm going to add a new operation. So you just go add new operation, and I'm going to say get, since we're in this sort of student world, get course by course ID. And pardon my spelling, or course name, I suppose I should call it. Right, and it's a get, and I'm going to create a new operation entirely. So I'm going to make it say course, and then I'll say course name. And this is description. Is this going to get course info using course name? Right, so there's that. I've created this new endpoint, and I want to save it. Right, so there it is. I've got this new operation with this new resource, and I can add additional resources. If I want to go in here, I can add new HTTP requests. So I can add delete, and we'll do that in a minute. But before I get there, I want to define an object that we're going to use, a JSON object that we're going to use to pass back and forth. So what I can do is I can go into the structures, and I can create a new structure. And this is sort of neat. And you create a data type. It's laggy. I got to look at my screen. So I'm going to create a new course object, and this is going to be, I'm going to call it the course JSON, because that's kind of like the naming convention I have going. So course JSON structure. I probably spelled that wrong. I did. So there it is. And I'm going to generate from a JSON example, right? So I'm going to do this. And I have a JSON example, which is cool. So I have this course object that I created from the USM course catalog. I just put together this using a JSON. I think it's the JSON creator you told me about a while back, Dan. And I put this together so we have an example. And I'll paste this in here. And so it'll take that JSON and it'll generate an object for me inside. And it'll give me all of the, and it'll pull in all of the different properties. I can go in. This is where if you want to document this thing, this is where you do it here. So you add a description, of course. And this is where if you do it up front, it pays dividends because when you go to press the documentation, it's already done. So as you're building and you're from course catalog. So that's that. And like course ID, this would be our GUID. You can put that in there. Class size, you can do stuff like this. You can do a minimum, or I'd say, I think the biggest hall at USM is like 160 people. So we'll put that in there. Professor, office hours, but you can go on and go. You see where this kind of going. Course number, this would be, you know, COS. So hold on. So this would be, you can put in some examples. COS 160, I don't know, math 256, and so on and so forth. So I can add examples like that. You can do other things, you know, you can add office hours, there's emails. So basically you can fill this out. As you fill this out, you're actually documenting the API as you go, which is sort of important. And you can also do something like add, and I'm going to have I cannot spell, there it is. Say, I prepped myself for this because I can't spell this word. And that would be required for, and then you can do, you know, you can add them. So they're not in, they weren't in the example JSON that I had, but I can actually extend that JSON object from within the API builder. And I can say, I want this to be an array of strings. So you can have more than one. We all know you can have more than one prerequisite for a college course. You know, maybe math 125 is a prerequisite for the discrete math course. So we do that. And then, you know, course number, course name, same sort of thing. Intro. Right? QCS and discrete. We can do stuff like that, right? So there, I'm building this object and this JSON object that I can use when I'm inside of my responses and requests. So this is a get course by course name, right? So I'm going to take a course name and I'm going to return on 200, and inside the body, I'm going to tell it I want to return. It will return a course JSON, that course JSON object that I just made right there, which is kind of cool. So I can save that, right? And then I can add, what is this course? Get course by course name. I can add a delete here. So delete. If you guys aren't liking this, I can change, but this is the way we're going. I got planned. So delete course, right? And so that will take, and that will be cut by course name also, right? And that response, that'll return not a 200, but a 202, that if it's found and we've found delete. And then we can also go in and we can add another operation, but you get it. So that's how you kind of do it. I can add another one. So what I think I'm doing here. So get course, delete course. Oh, add course, right? So you don't have a course ID for this one or a course name. So this would be a post, and the path would be just just course, right? We're just going to add a course. And this one, we're going to, the request is actually going to have, in the body of the request, we're going to have that object. So this takes a course JSON in the request body. So there's that. So we can add, we can get a course, we can delete a course, we can add a course. And so once I do that, and I've added my document, I've added my sort of descriptions as I go. So there, that's how you do that. And you can go into the documentation here, and it actually, I'll have documented all this as I've gone along. As you can see, I've got my operations, my new operations here. So I've got add course, they didn't put anything in there, delete course, and then get course by information. So I get course by using info. It says what it takes, it returns course JSON object, and so on. So that's kind of how it self-documents as you go. Sort of kind of neat. Another thing that you can do is, now that we've got these things, they're just stubs right now. All we have is really just the front end of the API. There's no implementation. What I can do is I can go into settings, and I can see this setting right here. It says turn, it says mocks. I can turn the mocks on. And if I save that, I can go try those mocks. All those API points are now available for everyone who has this URL. So I actually go in and test them, which is really kind of cool. So now we know there's no back end. A lot of these, there is a back end behind them. They are implemented, and I'll show you that in a minute. But we know that get course by course name isn't implemented anyway. I just made it right now. But I can open this request, and I can put in a course name here. Hopefully this works. Put in anything here, and then send it, and there it goes. It returns. It's mocked my endpoint, and it returns my fake data that I used for my example, which I think is really cool. That's super powerful. Now it's already up, and the client is already able to start hitting it and start testing their own software with it. So I think that's super neat. I thought this is really cool how it works. So that's kind of how that's sort of a little bit how the tester works. And we'll get more into that after when I show you the fully implemented version. But that's really the API designer in a nutshell. Really, what I wanted to show you about that. It's not hard to do. You just saw me do it. It's not difficult. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot more thought going into these APIs, but once you have the API sort of figured out, it's pretty easy to stand them up. So now that we've seen how to develop it, a little bit of testing, I'll open up Talend, and I'll show you how you get these things into Talend. So you can see I have these REST API definitions here. So what I'll do is I'll create a new API definition. And when this is tied together with my username and stuff into the Talend Cloud, so there it is. And you can see it's been modified literally about 5 minutes ago. So I'll bring that one in. So I'll grab the new API I just created with the new course stuff, and I'll call it V2. And I'll finish that. And now I have two APIs here. And so what I can do is I can create a standard job, and we'll call this student API V2, because we love versioning. And then I can open up that job. And what's really neat about this, it's just this easy. There it is. And if I go open up this component, you'll see that all of my resources are there. Even my add course, delete course, get course, they're all there. So what I can do here, and this is where it gets really good, I can go in here like this, and I can go row. Okay, what do I want to implement? Which one of these do I want to implement right now? Well, let's implement delete course. So we're probably going to have some sort of TMAP in here to do some processing, and then outside of the TMAP, we'll have I don't know, whatever DB output, TB MS SQL output, right? And then we'll tie those together. Or delete. And then after something, then I'm going to need, at the end of this, I'm going to need a TREST response, right? So that's what you do. I mean, obviously there's more would go on in the real world, but that's really the nuts and bolts of it. And you can go in and you can do your other one. So you get course by name right here, and then I just open. But you get, so that's how you build them out. So you have all of your things and you just build them out one at a time like that. So that's kind of how easy it is once you define the API using the API builder to pull it in here and actually start implementing stuff. It's really pretty slick. Just the integration is really good. So I'll show you, this is the API that I currently have. This is the existing student API. So it is. So here I have it actually, it's actually connected to, this is up and running. So I have a Microsoft SQL Server database running on Azure that this is plugged into, and I have a couple of 300 students or something in there. But you can see here it is. I have my get student by ID. I have my get students, which is, you know, the one that we can pass query parameters to. We have an add new student, which will actually insert a student into the database, and then we have a delete students. So I actually spin this bad boy up and get it going, and then we go back to the API tester, and then we can start throwing stuff at it, which is pretty cool. And you can see, I wish I had dual screen because it's way cooler in dual screen. Let me see if I can make that work. I've got more monitors at home, so I can go into the API tester. I got to turn off mocks first because I don't want to use my mocks anymore. And then I got to go try this in the API tester. And so now I have the API tester. I've got all my new resources and operations. So there they are. You also have this thing called scenarios, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But there you are. There are operations. And so if I say I want to, obviously my add course and delete course and the stuff I just have right now is not going to work because my actual running API doesn't do that. But say I want to get student by student ID. So I open this request, and let's see. Let me get a student ID. Here's the Beaver. If you guys don't use the Beaver, you should. It's awesome. And it's free. And it's free, which is the best part. So I'll get a student ID. I'll plug that in there. I'll send it off. And there we go. We got my student Pierce, Woodrow Theodore Pierce. And so we can see if I go back into Talend that will have executed, I will have executed the get student right here, one row through the get student. And we got the positive response. We found the student.
You gonna delete them from the Colby database?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. Yeah. So that's how you do that. I mean, and then again, you can go through and do all of these sort of things. Let's say we can add a student. Let's say we add this student right here. We'll send this. We'll add this. Who's this guy? This guy is Andrew Quincy. So we'll send him, right? He's sent. We accepted him. Let's see where it is. So we'll see we've added row here down the add student path. And then we can go in and we can get student by ID. And I think he was like 55555 or something like that. Yeah, there he is. And then we can send. And then we get Andrew back. There he is. And you can see again that we executed the get student by ID path, the positive path that we found him right here. This is the not found path, and we'll see that in a minute. And then I can delete that student. I can delete him. And so there it goes. We didn't. Now that happened really fast, but I think your internet here is faster than mine at home. But there it is. We deleted them. Right, so there it is.
Actions you do on the API just automatically the Talend runs.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. So I hit it. I do some testing in the testing API. All I've had to do,
How
right?
you connect to that? To this
I have a URL. So if you look down here, I have deployed it to this URI right there. There it is. So that's just local, right? It's my local URL, right? So then I put my local URL right there, and that's all I have to do. Since there's no, I mean, obviously, if you had set up some sort of authentication or stuff, you'd have to put those passwords in. But you know, it's for this demonstration, I don't have any that on there. So that's that. What else do I want to show you? All right, so yeah, so we've seen add student, get student. Oh yeah, get students is kind of cool. The fuzzy logic on this is weird. I didn't write this, but like if I put in Washington, it finds all kinds of people whose last name isn't Washington. And the only one I found that actually returns what I expected it to was Van Buren. So we'll put Van Buren in there and we'll send, and we'll get back a whole bunch of Van Burens. But if I put in, it's you know, it's the nature of the fuzzy logic, right? So that whoever defined that fuzzy logic function, I didn't write the function or write the component. made it really lax, so it picks up a whole bunch of other stuff. So while I was messing around with this yesterday, I noticed that. So if I put in Washington, if I spell it right, Washington, and then I send that off, you'll notice I'll get a whole bunch of other things that aren't just Washington. I've got Johnson and Madison and Clinton, and so the fuzzy logic's a little, yeah, the fuzzy logic's a little off. But anyways, I mean, we all know how fuzzy math works, right? So I thought that was interesting. But anyway, so it's kind of neat. That's the cool get students, and you just have these query parameters, and you can send it off and do your querying. So I'll just show you one more thing. I'll show you this. We can go into these scenarios. So this is my complex test scenario. I named it for you guys. So what we do here is we add a student, right? We add a student. Add old Tommy Guerrero here. I don't know if anyone knows who Tommy Guerrero is, but there he is. And then we add him, then we get him and verify that he was added correctly. Then we delete him, and then we verify that he was deleted. And the way we do this is when we add a student, we assert that we should get a 202 back, which is accepted. We get the student, we should get a status code of 200 along with the body. We delete the student, we should get another 202 accepted. And then here, when we look for him after he was deleted, we assert that we get a 404 not found. So that's how we do that. So if I run this, and sometimes it gets a little quirky, it throws a 303 at me instead of a 404, but there you go, it threw a 404. So you can see, if I go back up here, that it executed all 4 of those jobs right in a row. Bingo, 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 bingo. So that's sort of, this is where that CI could come in. You can plug this in line, test them as you go. So that's, and honestly, that's my whole demo. I mean, this is really easy. It's really sort of easy to use. I don't know how long that took.
20 minutes.
20 minutes. But it's not difficult. It really isn't. I mean, there's more we could get into, but that really is the gist of it. That's really the nuts and bolts of how it works.
So Paul, question on the integration, the new components.
Yeah, in the studio.
7 only, or is that all?
Yeah, 7.1. That's 7.1 only. Yeah.
That's like, okay.
It's brand new. I mean, this stuff's only a couple months old. That's why I've never actually implemented it. I can't wait to. I think it's great. It seems to work really well. And you could easily now you get easy access to create RESTful APIs. And so
another crazy question. I think I know the answer to this already. There's no open version of that.
I don't know. You have to ask the Talend guys. No, I don't. Yeah, I'm not aware. I don't buy this stuff. I just use it. Yeah.
I don't buy it. I just use it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, they just say here's your tools to use, right? You know, kind of. But yeah,
That's pretty awesome demo.
it is a pretty good. I mean, I really think if you get your hands on this, it's pretty powerful what you can do and how easy it is. I was really impressed when I saw the demo myself. I'm like, wow, that's slick. That really does just kind of work really nicely together. And then I spent the last, I think, about 12 hours putting this demo together because I had no clue what I was doing. It really was just what I thought it was going to be. It was just like, okay, I write this here and then I go over here and there it is, and then I can start using it. And I've been thoroughly impressed with how easy it is to use. So I'm kind of excited to find a project that I can actually use it on. Because that whole, and I think Dan's eyes light up when he saw that whole, like, here's the API is already available without the implementation in the back end. How nice that would be able to do.
Yeah, have a wide over here.
Yeah. So so that's it. I mean, we could poke around. You guys want to look at anything else? I mean, we can go look at this fuzzy match and see why it's so bad. It's just like, what did he do here? Yeah, you're using 11 Steam. We should have used a different one, right? What?
Matching started in the bottom, like all matches.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't use that. Best match, last match. Yeah. So when we do that, let me kill this and then run it again, see if it works any better. So get students. We'll just throw it. We'll see if this works any better this time. We only got one. Yeah, we only got one. I guess, right? We get the best one. Then it was the one that was at the highest, right? It had the highest number, right? So we got the top one. So yeah, that was just, I found that interesting that it just,
That's perfect.
yeah. you know, so there's got to be all matches. And I think we could probably define, we could change the matching functions in here, maybe to what's everything else. Let me see. Distance function, we could use a Jaro Winkler. Let's try that. See if we what we get when we do that. I'll just use Jaro, see what happens. But it is, I mean, this is the cool thing. These are all just standard Talend components, right? There's nothing really API specific once you're past those RESTful endpoints, right? You need one to come in, you need one to go out, but everything in the middle is just pure Talend jobs. It's kind of neat. So let's see what happens now. Yeah, it's no better. So it's worse. So yeah, that needs some tweaking. But yeah, I mean, I think part of the key is when you're doing the building this, you make sure that you're documenting this. I didn't do a great job, but making sure you're filling those things out. I mean, I guess we all know that Talend wants you to add the purpose and the definition. And I think when you're building these APIs, it really starts to pay dividends because you can expose, and like if I go in here, I go into the settings and I go into my documentation, you know, I made this public, right? So this documentation is available to anybody out there who wants to use my API. So by putting that stuff in as you're building it, the documentation is is creating itself, and then whoever's accessing that documentation has good documentation. You know, you don't actually have to do any additional work to create the documentation. You just have to describe what you're doing in the moment that you're doing it, which seems to be easier than trying to go back and write the documentation. It always ends up getting screwed up and stuff. So, but yeah, you can give it to your team, your public, or your password. And I think this just being able to instantly go from writing an API, creating an endpoint to be able to mock it and throw something at it to see you can get something back. It's just really cool. It's just really cool. Really makes that working with a client, working with the person who's developing the other side of the API is going to make that just so much easier to do because you have the API, you establish that handshake, sort of that contract right up front, and then you can work off it in both directions.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Welcome. I wish I could have done more, but it's pretty much all of it. Thank you for having me.
I guess we'll just open up to the floor. Whoever has any questions, not necessarily about API, but whatever you want to have questions about. We have our Talend guys here, Talend partners here. So if you have questions for them, questions for each other, I would say the floor is open. Network